It was, of course, a wild scene outside of the courtroom. In the courtroom today, Vincent Thompson of WURD Radio, of course, black-owned radio there in Philadelphia. Vincent has been covering this trial for a significant period of time. He was actually in the courtroom today. Vincent, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you, Roland. Good to be on the
show. First and foremost, describe for us the scene moments before, first of all, before the sentencing, when the judge came out and said he agreed with the assessment and called Bill Cosby a violent sexual predator.
Well, here's what happened. Before Bill Cosby was sentenced a couple of months ago, there was an assessment done by a group called the Pennsylvania Sexual Assessment Board that can recommend whether someone's a sexually violent predator or not. They look at transcripts, they look at testimony to come up with their decision. They also offered Mr. Cosby the opportunity to be interviewed. He preferred not to be interviewed by that assessment board. They issued their assessment, and then it's up to the judge to decide whether the assessment is the right thing or the wrong thing. He decided it was, and what it really means is that Mr. Cosby is under strict orders for reporting. So if he does get out within 3 years, because a 3 to 10 year sentence, as the judge indicated, he has to stay at least 3 years in a state prison. After the third year, he's eligible for parole. So if he would meet parole and would get out, then he would have certain things he'd have to do, similar to Megan's Law, where he'd have to report where he's living. He would have to. The thing I think that's most shocking for Mr. Cosby, and even kind of looked puzzled in the courtroom, was when they said they will list his name, address, and the crime on a website for sexual victims, for sexual assault victims, that he would be public. So you would know where his address is. You would know what he was convicted of. So I think that's the one thing that shocked a lot of people. And then when the sentencing came down, the sentencing law in Pennsylvania for what Mr. Cosby was convicted of is 22 to 36 months. So the fact that he got 3 years is right within the guidelines. Now remember, the district attorney was asking for 5 to 10 years. So he wanted him to serve 5 years minimum before he could have parole. The judge decided to do 3.
Vincent, the judge said, quote, "It is time for justice in a court of law. The day has come. The time has come." That's what he said right before he sentenced Bill Cosby. I have read some reports that Bill Cosby had his head down the entire time. So can you describe for us what you saw? What was Bill Cosby's reaction as the judge read that sentence?
Well, he was looking straight ahead. It was difficult to really see what his reaction was because there's 100 people in the courtroom and he was at the very front. And Mr. Cosby's back was toward us. And there were also people sitting in front of most of the media. So it was difficult to see what his position was. But I can tell you, after the verdict was read, he was quiet. He looked at his attorneys. And I think the thing that shocked him most is that he was going to be taken away in handcuffs. I don't know if he was prepared to be taken away moments later in handcuffs to a county prison. And that's where he's at right now. He's in the Montgomery County Correctional Facility.
At what point?
Then he'll be transferred to a state jail.
Vincent, at what point did the judge clear the courtroom? So were you in the courtroom when the bailiffs or the officers came over to Bill Cosby, or did that take place after the courtroom was cleared?
The sheriffs came toward Bill Cosby, but then they cleared the courtroom, and then it was after everybody had left the courtroom where you see the video of Bill Cosby being walked out with the handcuffs on the front of his hand. He was not handcuffed to the back. He was handcuffed to the front and then let out. But I can tell you right now, he is currently in the Montgomery County Correctional Facility, which is a state facility. He'll probably stay here a few days before he's transferred to what's called SCI Phoenix, which is the state prison here in southeastern Pennsylvania. And then they will assess him to determine what state prison he will actually end up in. There's no guarantee he's going to end up at Montgomery County prison. He could end up at a prison anywhere in the state.
The New York Post has this story. Bill Cosby laughs before going into custody. They claim that he was seen cracking jokes with his team in the Montgomery County Court as the sheriff's officers swooped in. Did you see anything like that?
I saw Mr. Cosby talking to Andrew Wyatt and others and laughing at some of the things, but I don't think it was Bill Cosby laughing at the sentence. You know, sometimes Sometimes the tears of a clown, right? You just laugh because you got to keep from crying. That's really what I think it was, but I don't think Cosby was laughing at the sentence. What I saw is a man who was really surprised that he was going to be taken away in handcuffs that day. I mean, think about it. Right now, Bill Cosby is sitting in a jail cell in suburban Philadelphia, probably in self-containment, thinking, how the heck did I end up here after the last 4 or 5 months when I was in house arrest at my home? And that's what his attorneys were asking for. They were asking for him to stay out while he appealed his sentence. And the judge said, no, this is not a sentence that allows you to stay at home. We're sending you directly to a state facility.
There were a lot of people who were very shocked at how aggressive Camille Cosby has been in attacking the judge and criticizing the judge, hiring a former prosecutor to, quote, investigate the judge. And I talked to many other lawyers who said, look, when you're facing a retrial, the last thing you do is attack the judge. Well, after that verdict, the retrial, that's exactly what Andrew Wyatt and others did when they read a statement from Camille Cosby afterwards. And over the last 2 weeks leading up to this sentencing, the same thing has happened, where court observers surprised at how aggressive Camille Cosby and the Bill Cosby team was, knowing full well that the decision to sentence him was in the hands of this judge.
I think they were. A lot of the courtroom observers I know that deal with Montgomery County Court, and for people that don't know, Montgomery County is maybe about 30 miles outside of Philadelphia. They were very surprised with that aggressive stance by Camille Cosby. But I think this is the thing that really amazes me. At today's sentencing, Camille Cosby was not here. And there's a section of the court where Bill Cosby could have his friends and his family. There were only 4 people in that section. 2 longtime friends, Andrew Wyatt, his spokesman, and Ebony Vincent, his spokesperson. So, here's a man who for years was everything. People wanted to be near him. People wanted to touch him. But at a time when he really needed support, no one was there for him.
Vincent, just a couple more questions for you. First off,
Shoot.
You mentioned Camille Cosby not being there. She didn't attend most of that second trial, correct?
She didn't attend most of it, but we did see her at certain times. Like we saw her at the end of the second trial when they were imposing sentence. You know what I mean? When they were saying he was guilty. But we did see her, but I hadn't seen her for the 2 days of the sentencing that just happened yesterday and today, which I was pretty surprised about personally.
Last question. WURD, of course, there in Philadelphia. Bill Cosby, beloved figure in the city of Philadelphia, always represented Philadelphia, always represented Temple University. Just like here in Washington, D.C., when you think about, of course, his relationship when it comes to Ben's Chili Bowl, all of that. What do you think his legacy now will be when it comes to how African Americans will view him? Because there are a lot of black folks who are still upset with Bill Cosby's comments about black folks, about their values, about how they should behave, about black folks protesting when they said Pookie would get shot by the police and being chased down. So you still have these very hardcore feelings. What have you been hearing from WURD listeners in Philadelphia about how they still feel today about Bill Cosby?
Well, I think it's going to be the same way, Roland, as it's been since the beginning of the trial. If you're a Bill Cosby supporter and you think he was a man wrong, you're going to continue to think he's a man wrong until the end of time. But if you were somebody who's like, Bill Cosby did this to women, sexually assaulted them, people have to remember about a third of the 50 women are African-American women. Mm-hmm. So, he didn't have a specific type of person. He black, white, it didn't really matter. They're going to think, he deserved what he got. And to a lot of people, Bill Cosby had over 12 attorneys representing him in the 2 retrials, in the sentencing. He's probably going to have different attorneys representing him when it comes to the appeal process that's going to take months and years. And he's had to spend well over $1 million. As you know, Pookie and Ray Ray don't have that kind of money to fight for an appeal. So I think when people argue, well, he didn't have effective counsel or he didn't have the best that money can buy, Cosby had the best that money can buy. If anybody could have had the legal team to have gotten him out of jail, it was Bill Cosby.
Vincent Thompson, WURD Radio. I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome, Roland. Thanks for having me on.
All right.